Hello, how's it going? I've got a few things in the pipeline.
คุณคะ ลูกเรากำลังจะทำอะไรอะคะ
เฮ้ยชมพูชมพูชมพูชมพูชมพูชมพู
to unveil. But what I wanted to do for today's log is sort of have a little talk about my editors, how I made them, how I put them together. This will just be a high-level discussion because there are a lot of individual implementation details. And the TLDR on this is, in my channel, I've made a playlist on, I think it's called GUI Programming in Python, where I go through PyQt and how to use it, the fundamentals. But as I have mentioned in past devlogs, I made all of the tools for my game environment. Here we're looking at the animation tool. So we have like a bunch of bones we can stick in. Ooh, there we go. Just had to swap out the assets. So here we can see our character, and I'll just switch this down into animation mode so we can see the full gamut of widgets. Now, these tools were created using Python and PyQt6, which is a graphical user interface framework. And it's all done using the model view controller paradigm. So when we look at stuff on the screen, we have to imagine the composition of elements. For instance, here we have this little box here where we're setting the editor mode. That is its own widget that gets put on the screen. And then we see that there's a composition of these together in a horizontal layout. In building the tool, I first started with the layout of the elements, and I said, okay, I'm gonna have like a top, middle, and a bottom. And then further within that, I said, how are elements going to fit inside that? So the top is going to have a bunch of these little panels, and each of those will be an individual widget with their own, layouts and elements. And then the middle will have sort of our mouse mode. Then we'll have the main content view, and then we'll have some further information, for instance, the hierarchy. We can make things visible or invisible and stuff like that. So if we look at this, this is a horizontal layout again within the middle panel. And then these first two things are sort of their own widgets, that's fine. But this rightmost is a vertical layout. And actually, as I switch things around, that vertical layout is rebuilt. So this is completely dynamic. This one might be a little much to get into. I'll get into, go into my map editor. So like I was saying, it's all model view controller. The model is the fundamental database, basically. It's the fundamental, like, real world stuff. So if I click into the model for my map editor, there's a bunch of objects, and these are like the fundamental objects that I'm creating or editing or destroying in my game world. So a game object is very simple. It just has a rectangle which describes an object's position and size, and an integer variable called type, which just describes what type of object that is. That's later used in deciding which color to draw the object, which label to put on it, and stuff like that. Then I have other classes which can extend that. For instance, an arena start area has a position and an object type, but it also has further parameters like which arena index is this, how many waves, what difficulty, and so on. And this is probably a good point to mention that when I'm making these tools, my focus is not on performance of the tools. My focus is on stability, buildability, I guess, quick development time. And so I bust out all of the object-oriented tools in my toolkit. Anyway, so that's my model. And then if I go over to my widgets, this is where I describe sort of my view. So anything which is visible on the screen is some sort of widget. So for instance, this is just a super simple button widget. And I can pack that into any other widgets that I like. Oh man, this video is going to be, I'm going to have to really edit this one down. Yeah, let's go with this, a brush view. So the brush is basically saying when I click, what object am I going to drop down with that click? It's like a paintbrush, except instead of colors, it's got objects. So when I create this thing, I need to give it a layout because, well, if I were to run this box up here is the brush view. It's a horizontal layout because we have a label for what the view is, for what the thing is, and then we have a selection box for which brush we're going to drop down. So I can drop pad, that changes, drop block, that changes. Anyway, so we have this label, and then we have this selector and the label and the selector, and those are both sort of fundamental widgets. They can be packed into layouts, they can be added to layouts. And so that's what I'm doing down here. When I say add widget, that is putting it horizontally, left to right. And this thing itself inherits from widget. So when I set the layout for this thing, that is inherently going to add every widget which was added to the layout. And this is a really important part. So a widget can emit a signal when a certain event happens. So you could have a mouse move, a mouse click, something, a whole bunch of ones. And in particular, the combo box widget has a current index changed signal. Now, when a signal is triggered, it can be connected to a function to be performed. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting this up so that when the index of the combo box is changed, in other words, I click on a different item, it will call this function, index changed, with the new index value. And then from there, the processing is up to me. I say, hey, set the editor programs brush to this different type. As an example, again, this main view is basically that big blue canvas which had all the objects in it. There are different events that you can connect. One way to connect an event is to explicitly connect that slot to a signal, but another way to set off an event is actually to override the default event. But the mouse move event by default will not occur every frame. It'll only occur when the mouse is focused, has clicked on the widget. But one way to set it so that the widget is always tracking the mouse's motion is to set mouse tracking. So I go set mouse tracking true, and then when I implement this event, it will automatically be called anytime the mouse moves. So I guess the thing that I'm getting at is this code was not meant to be shown to anyone. This is just for me internally, and I will be modifying it as I use these tools more and I think of more useful features. So with all those disclaimers aside, if you're interested in this sort of stuff, check out the playlist that I did. There's not too many videos, just a few on these concepts. And in general, the three main concepts I would say is layouts, thinking about compositing layouts together in a view, widgets, knowing how to add widgets to layouts, knowing how to set the layout of a widget, and so on, and signals. So knowing how to connect slots to signals so that signals get fired off correctly. Yeah, so that's it for today, I would say. Let me know if you have any questions, but otherwise, hey, business as always. I will see you again soon. Have a good one. Bye.